Let's start with the EIC Board. The board is composed of 21 people, and the main role of the board is to advise the European Commission on the policy of the EIC. So which instruments, which priorities, and we want to be close to the innovators' journey, so we also want to promote operational excellence of the EIC instruments. The board is chaired by a president. The president is full-time, unlike the board members who are only part-time, and my role is to chair and prepare and follow up on the meetings of the board, but I'm also the ambassador, it's the visual face of the EIC, so that most of my time is to talk with beneficiaries, with applicants, go along the ecosystem and do information days, for example. Well, I take my function very seriously because I take seriously what is my mandate, and my mandate is to be that ambassador, to be close to the innovators' experience, and also to look ahead of what are the next steps. And that's where the Scaling Club is important, since we have most of beneficiaries got a grant or the first fund, but that's not the end of the story. They have to scale up, become larger. So I'm also looking at what should we have as an EIC in 2027 or in 2034. And we have to prepare that long in advance. And that's also important to understand the ecosystems, because ecosystems also change slowly. Well, we do two things. We do a speed skating and we do a marathon skating. So speed skating is what has to be improved in the work program 2025. And the second thing is what needs to improve in what we call FP10, the 10 framework program. So that's after 2027. And I think the biggest concern we have as a board, and I have as a president, is how do we organize bigger tickets from public funding, but also bigger tickets with a bigger leverage. So a larger involvement of private capital, and two categories are important. One is a better linkage between the startups and corporates, also as possible co-investors. And the other one is we are wealthy in Europe, but most of our wealth is immobilized in real estate and in pension funds. So how can we activate other sources of capital for the economy of our children of the future? Well, the bulk is, most of our instruments are to the earlier stages, Pathfinder, Transition, but in funding, the biggest instrument is called the Accelerator, and Accelerator is more or less a Series A funding, a bit seed and a bit B, and Scaling Up is more Series B, C. So with the new STEP proposal of the European Commission, that's the first step in also organizing Series B and Series C funding. So a larger ticket, but what qualifies a number of the Scaling Club members is they have been able to organize with the 15 million you get under the Accelerator to do that in several rounds with, let's say, a higher leverage in each round. And so the first 5 million, they found 5 million private capital. For the second 5 million, they've maybe found 15 or 20. And the last 5 million, they were able to raise 50 to 100 million more. And those champions are largely represented within the Scaling Club. Well, we should realize that the amount of funding we have, it's 10 billion euros for this period. If you compare that with what you need in terms of research and innovation money for energy transition, material transition, for each of those transitions you would need 70, 80 billion euros. So 10 billion is tiny. So it is a, let's say, an ignition, to take the word of today. It is an ignition of processes, but it's certainly not enough to fund the entire transitions we have to make in the next 30 years. So one power or one ambition is to increase the budget, but I think it's as realistic to say, well, if it is igniting, it should create a movement in which also others participate, corporates, larger VCs, pension funds. So I see myself more, let's say, as the leader of the stack of creating a larger movement, more sheeps around us, than basically pushing for it should be more money. Yeah, and power is authority is more important than power. In Dutch we say gezag is belangrijker dan macht. So authority is more important than power. Well, deep tech is the focus of the EIC, and it's very important because that's where the market failure is the most apparent and where there's a lack of funding. There are two other challenges. One is, let's say, also tech but not deep. I think a software as a service, So basically applications in where you have 1 year of development and you can go in the market and you can have a cash flow. That's, let's say, especially in the west of Europe, less of a problem finding funding. In Eastern Europe, so we call them the widening countries, it is a challenge. So that's also important to have instruments at member state level that cover the less deep tech. That's one. And the second thing that's also important, but outside of our remit, is we still have hundreds of thousands of medium-sized SMEs, family companies, often owned, third generation, fourth generation. They have to transform as well. They have to digitize, and we don't cover that change. However, we have instruments like the business acceleration services to connect our startups with, let's say, that wide community of industrial SMEs that can make machines or test equipment. So that's personally one of my ambitions, is to create that connection stronger between, let's say, the industrial heartlands of Europe and the scaling up hubs or startup hubs that you have typically in university cities. Yeah, so today the Scaling Up Day, the ignition of that process, and for all of you who are aiming at scaling up, I have a number of advices. The most important one is learn from each other and also team up, pool. So if you can, let's say, provide products and services together, you're stronger than on your own. And where I hope I can help you is really to open up, let's say, the larger public procurement tickets. So many of you have solutions for energy transition, digitization of public services, digitization or improvement of public transport. So I want to be on your side when you need also to break open markets to scale up, because besides capital, the best thing you can have is a client.